So, the big question is this: how are ambitious people like us, who don't have a lot of resources, did not go to Ivy League colleges, were not born into wealth, how do we become resourceful enough? Use our creativity, our dedication, and a little bit of crazy to bootstrap our way to realizing our dreams. Whether it is launching a new company, launching a new app, or making it to the top of the corporate ladder. That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. If you like this video, do not forget to hit that like button now. Or if you want us to improve our content, go ahead and hit the thumbs down button and give us your feedback in the comment section below. Here at Tetranoodle, we are passionate about entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. Every week, we bring you insightful and engaging interviews, tips, tricks, and strategies to help you grow your business or rise in your corporate profession. So, if you're new here, please consider subscribing and do not forget to hit that bell icon so that you are notified when we publish new content. Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams Show. I'm your host, Manuj Aggarwal, and today I will be talking with a young entrepreneur and very successful at that, Mike Reid. Mike is a co-founder and director of Dent Global, a training and advisory company that runs businesses and business accelerators for founders of 6 to 7 figure revenue service firms. He started his journey quite early, and by the age of 26, Mike was consistently running highly successful large-scale promotional campaigns, generating tens of millions of dollars of new business. And Dent Global operates in 4 cities, and he has a team of about 50 people. He has acquired businesses in web development, video production, and publishing to form a full-service strategy and implementation group for entrepreneurs. Mike is now helping lead the next wave of Dent's expansion into Toronto, Canada. And we were just discussing before this interview how his move is going. He recently moved to Toronto. And believe it or not, he's a 30-year-old successful entrepreneur. So welcome, Mike.
Manoj, thank you very much for having me. That's a very kind introduction.
Awesome. All right, so let's dive into it. So Mike, tell us about what do you do and how did you get started on your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. So I run a training and advisory company, as you said earlier, called Dent Global. Mm-hmm. And what that means is we run business accelerator programs for traditional service-based small business owners is our niche. So if you imagine, Manoj, what Technology Accelerator does, in fact, I'm actually sitting in the DMZ Technology Accelerator in Toronto here at the moment. And what they do is they provide access to mentorship and guidance and best practice and tools and resources and great suppliers and a network, all these kind of things. 10 years ago when we launched Dent, we saw that there were traditional service companies out there who were great at what they do, but they needed help knowing how to leverage technology, how to build their brand, and they didn't really have many environments they could get into, which would be a high performance environment that would help them project manage the growth of their business. So we launched our accelerator, specializing in working with those traditional service companies and teaching them about how they can differentiate themselves, differentiate their brand, get better at communicating their value proposition through their pitch, learning how to unpack their intellectual property and formalize it into whether that be technology or whether that be into better intellectual property assets, and ultimately just to leverage their business so they could grow and scale it. So for 10 years we've been doing that in Australia and in the UK, and we have a little community in Singapore and a little one in Tampa, Florida as well. And we've worked with 3,000 founders through that process over a 12-month accelerator, and we bring together an amazing faculty of mentors for them to work with, and peer group, and online resources, and accountability, and structure, and all those kind of things. So I've landed in Toronto to set that up here this year in 2019.
That's great. Welcome to Canada.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
How I got here was a two-part story. It was both a love story and a business story. So I feel that's a great reason to move countries.
Oh yeah. There's always a woman behind a successful man, as they say, right?
I couldn't agree more.
Okay. Well, I won't lie. Like I had a similar stories. I moved to Canada just because of that reason.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
your wife's Canadian.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Very cool. We'll have to we'll share stories about that later on.
Sure, sure. All right. So now let's talk about this cool concept that you preach, being a key person of influence. So, what is that all about?
Our flagship accelerator program is called the Key Person of Influence Accelerator. And
Hmm.
what that's the premise of what that means is that what you'll notice, Manoj, is in any industry, and for anyone listening, you'll notice that there is always an inner circle of people who are the most known, liked, and trusted people. And they tend to attract the best opportunities. They get to be part of more interesting projects. They earn more money. They have more fun. And the reason why they are on that inner circle of their industry is not necessarily because they have better technical skills than everyone else in the industry.
Yeah.
It's not the functional skills that really separates them as leaders within their industry.
Yeah.
It's more of what we call the vital skills. And from our perspective, we've defined those skills into 5 core areas, which is those key people of influence. What we noticed was they were really good at communicating what they do through their pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone asks you the question, what do you do? A key person of influence has a really powerful way of answering that question. And often they can communicate more in 2 minutes than someone else could in an hour's conversation. So they're really clear on their value. They're really clear on how to communicate it. The second thing that we noticed was these key people of influence also had a lot of thought leadership and a lot of great insights about their industry, and they weren't afraid to share it. And what they did very well was they learned to take their ideas and their insights and formalize them into published content. And whether that be they wrote a lot of content, articles, things like that to share their insights, share their ideas. Well, in many cases, they actually wrote a book about their area of expertise, and that book helped position them as an authority in their field. And as a result, they'd attract a lot more opportunities, a lot more inbound opportunity, more interest in what they do because of that tool that helped them leverage their message. So they did publishing very well as the second component. What they also thirdly realized was that if they were to scale their business and to scale what they did outside of just them, they'd have to find ways to package their intellectual property and productize their IP.
Yeah.
So they had the ability to, stop just trading time for money or stop them being the bottleneck from value delivery. So a technology business is an example of, like just really taking intellectual property and converting it into technology that allows that IP and those ideas to be delivered at scale, or that value proposition to be delivered at scale. A service business can find ways to productize their intellectual property so that the founder doesn't necessarily have to be the only person showing up and delivering what they do. So, for example, in our business, there's 5 principles behind becoming a key person of influence. And rather than me showing up having to be the only person delivering that, we actually bring together experts who are specialists in each of those areas, and they become the people that help deliver our training. So it frees me up to focus on, growth and scaling the business. The fourth area was what these key people of influence also realized was if we're going to become more known and recognized, we need to build more of a profile. So they were good at building a social profile online. In many cases, they were good at getting into traditional media. And then the fifth area was they would collaborate with other key people in their industry to form partnerships and joint ventures and alliances and things like that. And those things help them really leverage their brand and leverage their influence. So what we discovered was those 5 things, when they came together, that really helped kind of move someone towards the inner circle of their industry and be seen and recognized as that key person of influence.
That's awesome. So that's what you call, I guess, the 5 P's of key person of influence.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And what we've found is I think if you're in business and if you're an entrepreneur, focus is really difficult. Because we're all afflicted by the bright, shiny object syndrome of lots of ideas and lots of new things we could be doing. What we've discovered is that, like a lot of things in business and life, having periods of intense focus around a particular thing can be really beneficial, but depending on what kind of goal you're looking to achieve at that one point in time. And becoming a key person of influence in your industry isn't the only element to grow and scale a business. It's one important aspect, we believe. But it's, growing and scaling a business requires lots of different things. But, the benefit we found for many of our clients is, when you kind of get that focus of, hey, if there's just 5 main areas I'm going to really double down on in the next 12 months, makes a big difference.
That's awesome. So is this possible to, is it possible for a new entrepreneur or maybe somebody who hasn't even launched their company yet to become a key person of influence? Or does it have to be that they are in business, they're flourishing already and they want to go to the next level?
So it's a two-part question. One is the idea of becoming a key person of influence implies that you've got enough raw material of insights and expertise to be able to do a better job at packaging and scaling those insights. So you can't scale anything that's broken to begin with. So if something's broken, if you don't have enough experience in an industry, if you don't have enough insight into the industry or insight into the customer problems, where you can actually deliver, deliver great value to people in the first place, you need to demonstrate and prove that first. And then once you've proven you can demonstrate great value, then you can scale that value through the way you choose to position yourself in your industry. Now, there are ways to hack that process, so you can fast track it. And, one of the most powerful ways to fast track it is by who you associate with. So, as an example for me, arriving in Canada, I arrived in Canada in February this year, and to launch a chapter for the business here. And I don't know anyone, no network, no nothing, apart from my girlfriend. I was the only person I knew in Toronto. And in the past, 5 or 6 months, I've gotten to know some of the most influential leaders, entrepreneurs in and around Toronto. And I've been invited to, exclusive invite-only events and dinners and all sorts of different things by starting to establish that network. And part of how I've approached that is really by looking at all of these people as potential partners for our business. And so the way we deliver our program is, like I said, we bring together some very amazing entrepreneurs who come and deliver the training. And so,
Oh, Mike, I think I lost your audio. Hang on.
Sorry, Manuj. Let me just plug that back in.
Okay. All right. We'll edit it out. Don't worry.
How's that now?
Yeah, this is better now.
Okay, great. So one of the things I did when I first arrived in Toronto was I created a hit list of who are the 30 or 40 or 50 entrepreneurs that I wanted to reach out to and connect with. In fact, you were actually on that list. That's, I think, how we originally
really?
Okay. That's how we originally got connected. Awesome. And so I created that hit list. And then what I did was I recorded a little personalized video for each of those people saying, hey, Jenny, my name's Mike. I'm from Australia. I've just arrived in Toronto. I was interested in connecting with you from what I saw on your LinkedIn or whatever it is for these reasons. Let me give you a bit of background. I've been running a training advisory company called Dent. We operate in a few cities around the world, blah, blah, blah. And I was interested in your expertise because I thought potentially you may be a great fit for someone to come in and teach and train our clients. So I'm on the lookout for speakers and people like that. Would you be open to a conversation? And so, those reach outs created a lot of cut through where, if you imagine someone on LinkedIn gets spammed all day long, but all of a sudden they get a little personalized video with my face on there just for them, then that immediately gets cut through. So that was a way that I started to, connect in with some of the more influential, entrepreneurs around Toronto. And, whether or not that conversation led to a speaking engagement or not is an entirely different thing, but it opened the door. It allowed me to have a conversation. And from that conversation, you can develop a relationship. That person might connect you with someone else. And then, because that influential person connected you with someone else who's influential, all of a sudden you've got established authority and credibility.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great.
So, I think that's just I'm probably a good case in point that I'm not a key person of influence in Canada because I've arrived with no reputation or no brand, but in a short space of time, we've been able to bring on some really influential people into our business by leveraging the power of partnership.
That's great. That's great. All right. So let's start, exploring these 5 Ps a little bit more in details. Let's start with the pitch. So, this is where, a lot of people get sort of confused, and messaging is very important and words are very important. So how do you take something which is undefined and sort of, chaotic and doesn't make sense, and come up with a concise pitch that will resonate with the audience?
So what we've distilled or discovered over the years is that we've worked with a lot of very, very influential people around developing a structure or a framework of how to communicate, how to pitch. One of our original pitching mentors was a guy called Mike Harris, who Mike built 3 multi-billion-pound companies in the UK. He started a credit card. He started one of the world's first internet-only banks. And Mike was a fantastic, amazing salesperson, pitcher. He could really communicate powerful ideas, and he was pitching, huge deals and opportunities all of his career. And so between him and we have another very guy who sold his company for $50 million in Australia, ran a software company called Solvit Software, sold it to Schneider Electric, and he was an amazing pitcher as well. And so he helped us distill these frameworks. And what we realized was there was actually probably 8 steps. There was 8 components to a really amazing pitch. And we called this pitch the Capstone Pitch, because Capstone is an acronym for each of these 8 steps. Would you like me just to share what each of those steps
for
are?
sure.
Yeah. So the first step is clarity. If someone asks you the question, what do you do? The mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make is they try and invent fancy terminology to describe what they do, or they try and differentiate themselves too soon. But the problem for the listener is they don't actually understand what you do in the first place. So the very first step of a pitch is you need to establish, hey, let me help the listener, the audience, put you into a box or a category, so I at least know what general genre you're in. And when I know what genre you're in, then I can focus in on what makes you special and unique and credible and valuable and all those kind of different things. So the first step is clarity. The second step is authority. So when someone asks the question, what do you do, and you can deliver clarity, the next question we're asking in our mind, whether or not someone's aware of it, is, okay, why should I believe you? Help me see why you've got authority to talk about what you do. So this is where it's important for an entrepreneur to, to highlight their experience and highlight their expertise or highlight their track record. So things like, who have you been associated with in the past? How many clients have you worked with in the past? What sort of results have you gotten in the past? Quantify those things. Have you won any awards? Have you ever been featured in any media? These are all things that help build authority and credibility in the eyes of the listener. So you need to name drop a few of those things to give some context around, hey, this is what I do, but this is why it's also credible. The third step, and maybe I'll just cover the first 4 because it's a long process. But the third step is problem, right? So as soon as you've established what you do, why you're credible, the next thing is, okay, well, help me understand what problems can you address or help solve, and so this is where we have a saying with our clients that having a PhD in your customers' problems is really vital for you being able to then communicate them back to them in their own words, in the way they need to hear them, in such a way they can see that you really understand them better than they even understand themselves. And when you can communicate in that way, and you can really talk to what the problem is, the implication of those problems, the impact it may have on them, really hit the hot buttons and the pain points of understanding. You can show them, you can empathize and show them you understand what's going on in their world, and the impact that's having on them, in such a way that it's he really gets my greatest fears and challenges when it comes to whatever it is that I've got going on. If you're talking to someone who's your perfect target audience, as an example.
Yeah. Cool.
And then the fourth step is being able to present a compelling solution, a compelling bridge between the problem someone's experiencing and an idea we call the prize. So Manuj, if you imagine when someone's afflicted by, let's say you've got a business owner who's just spending hours and hours in admin, every day of the week, and they're trying to get the books done, and the books isn't their skill set at all or strong suit. And so they're spending all this inefficient time trying to figure out their numbers and get the books done and reconciled and blah, blah, blah. And it's causing them all sorts of headache and grief. And so what do they want on the other side of that? Well, let's imagine that the prize in that case is, effortless numbers, or effortless bookkeeping, or effortless accounting. And it's like, could someone come in and wave a magic wand and just give me effortless accounting in my business? Like, for that person, I'd love to have that. And so when you can identify what's the prize, then that becomes the center point by which you build your value proposition, solution, the way you communicate the solution around delivering upon that outcome. Because that business owner doesn't care about accounting; they care about what's the outcome, the prize and how can you show them you can deliver that prize in a really efficient and effective way. And so the fourth step is about how you communicate that solution. So they're just four components of a compelling pitch. As you can hear, there's a bit to it, but what we've discovered with many of our clients is that when you're familiar with the framework, you then have a really powerful structure for having any conversation with, whether it's a prospect or giving a talk or whatever it may be. You can kind of see each of those stages as different stages of the conversation. It's not about getting up and just pitching in front of a group. It's about how do you have a really compelling conversation.
Yeah, that's great. Very intriguing and very comprehensive framework. I would love to, maybe in another conversation, learn about the rest of the steps. But let's continue on. You brought up a very interesting one, which is publish. I've heard this a number of times, but there are different types of medium that people can use. You mentioned a book, articles. So what is the best way to get out there and publish yourself and share the knowledge that you have inside of your mind?
So there's a few different tiers, I suppose, of quality of published content. So publishing on your own blog is the baseline, bottom of the food chain kind of published content you can put out there, or publishing on LinkedIn or whatever it may be. Like they're all great channels to use, but it's harder and harder, as I'm sure to get organic reach and through any of those mediums. So the quality of what you write is obviously the ticket to the game. If you put out shit, you're going to get shit back. But yeah, so your owned media is one way to publish. Kind of a next rung up the food chain is if you can publish through earned media, through someone else's media, someone who already has an audience, already has a platform, and then collaborate with them because by association with their platform, that gives your content more credibility and authority, and it obviously allows you to get out to a much wider audience because you can leverage off other people's audience. What we see is like the third, or kind of the top rung of the food chain in publishing, is when you can produce a book. Now, for many people, they may see a book as, do people still read books nowadays? And, I really understand some of the concerns that someone has around, books are maybe old fashioned and they're not read anymore and they're a dying medium and all these kind of different things. But, and look, I can understand that. But what we've discovered now, after working with 3,000 founders, and we've had 1,000 of them become published authors in their industry, is that writing a book is a very powerful way to communicate authority around an area of expertise, a subject matter of expertise, and it also indicates to people that you've spent enough time really contemplating this area, this issue, this this topic, to actually produce a book on it, because it's not easy to produce a book. It requires a lot of effort and insight and, real kind of effort to get it done. And so what that does is when you can go into a meeting and you can put a book on a table, all of a sudden it communicates the quality and the credibility behind what you do in a far different way. But it packages your insights into a format that is more valuable in the eyes of your reader or listener. So if I give you a book, Manuj, about our principles, you would perceive that to be far more interesting and valuable than if I sent you an article to something online. So that, just the value of that is now received as a gift, more so than just, hey, here's an article.
Yeah.
And when you can use that to leverage relationships, you can use that to leverage into existing networks, then that's where it becomes very powerful. So as an example, what many of our clients find is that the book helps them break into a relationship they never would have otherwise got, whether that be into media, whether that be into a potential partnership. And the way they use the book is as a tool to help spread the message about what they do. So they may offer a whole bunch of books or a couple of boxes of books to a partner to give away to their clients. Because gifting a book to their clients, all of a sudden that makes that partner look really good in the eyes of their clients. But it also takes your message, your ideas in a format and gives it to someone else where they receive it, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, this is a valuable gift to me. It has an entirely different perception. So when they read it, they're far more impacted by what you have to say. And so, it's for us, it is by far and away the most powerful way to communicate your ideas. And if you think about it logically, it makes a lot of sense. The challenge and the difficulty in producing a book is directly, inversely proportional to the results, I suppose, right? Maybe it's not inverse, but it's proportional to the results. If something's really difficult to do in life and few people do it, then it's typically a valuable thing to do.
That's great. That's, I'm blown away by the insights you're sharing. So thanks a lot for that. Now, continuing on with that topic, you have an astonishing collection of publications. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So it's kind of you to say that. I don't personally have an astonishing collection of publications, but my business partner, Daniel Priestley, and our company does have an astonishing amount of publications. So Daniel, who I've been in business with for the last 10 years when we co-founded Dent, he's written 4 best-selling books, and each of these books is designed to help an entrepreneur to navigate a particular stage of the entrepreneur journey. And what we've discovered is that the entrepreneur journey is a lot more predictable than most people think. I think when you're in your own business, you get so close to it that you lose perspective on the fact that the problems you're solving have been solved before, and they've probably been solved many times before. And there's been many entrepreneurs who've been through very similar challenges. We also lose perspective on the fact that there's particular stages of business which are just inherently difficult and hard. And then you get to certain scales and certain levels of business where it gets a lot more profitable and a lot more enjoyable. And then as you break through that particular level of scale, you get to another stage, and then it gets really difficult and really hard again. So, what we've realized is that, from about zero to about, 10 to 15 million, there's 4 distinct stages in the entrepreneur journey. Would it be helpful for me to share what we see those as?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So the 4 distinct stages are, the first stage we call, the very, very first stage is startup, which is, hopes and dreams and enthusiasm and, lots of excitement. And, and then what happens very quickly is that fades. And then we get stuck in this phase called the wilderness. And we call it the wilderness of business because it's like, imagine you're wandering through the wilderness trying to, figure out how this whole thing works. You're really trying to understand, like, who is my customer and like what problems are we actually solving? How do we actually really solve? How are we going to even get customers? Like, we've gotten a few, but how are we going to do that repeatably?
I'm laughing because I'm right there. I can relate to that because I'm in that wilderness period right now.
And we need to, find find a team to help us do that, and then create some systems around how we manage that. And, so you're doing lots of things for the first time, and you're not rinse and repeating. You're just like figuring it all out and trying to piece it all together. So, it's up, it's down. It's like a roller coaster of emotions in that wilderness phase. And, the reality is, statistically, most businesses in Canada or Australia or the UK, about 70 to 75% of businesses are doing less than $500,000 in revenue. And we call that less than $500,000 the wilderness phase, because you don't have enough, you're not big enough yet to really have a big team around you, or much of a team around you. So you're still doing a lot of things yourself, and you're still doing a lot of functional things yourself. And any cash you get kind of gets quickly chewed up in new growth or making mistakes or doing things through trial and error. So there's this sort of awkward phase to begin with, we call the wilderness. And then what happens between about $500,000 to $2 million in revenue, roughly, is there's two phases within that. You can either be what we call a struggling boutique, or you can be a lifestyle boutique. So a struggling boutique means that often you see a business that may be doing like good revenue. They might be doing 7 figures, they got $1 million in revenue, but let's say they've got 10 people on the team. So how does that business feel?
Yeah,
it feels like hard work and struggle, and there's not a lot of profit left over, because it's all being chewed up in inefficiencies in people. And it's not very systemized. There's not a lot of intellectual property that's driving value creation. It's human beings, human sweat having to deliver the value. And so what needs to happen for that kind of business is they need to really develop their intellectual property assets. They need to formalize, how they acquire a client into digitized assets. They need to, take their key ideas and key kind of educational content and package that into ways that can allow that message to spread without them. They need, better systems for delivering and all that kind of thing, so that they can start to either increase revenue per person, or reduce the amount of people to bring revenue per person in the business back to a good level. And when you can take revenue per person up to more like 200 grand revenue per person, that's where you move into what we call a lifestyle business, where it's fun, it's profitable. There's a key person of influence leading it from the front. You've got really great systems and formalized IP, and all of it looks great up until about 2 million. And then at about 2 million and 12 people, what tends to happen is that to the 13th person, it starts to unravel. Because when you get to sort of 13 to 14 to 16 to 20, you all of a sudden you've got a lot more complexity. So, where you were a small band of rebels before, now there's a whole bunch of complexity. You need new infrastructure and new systems to manage that complexity. You need to invest heavily in that infrastructure. You need to grow the team. You need to grow revenue at the same time to be able to catch up. And so that next phase, from about 2 to 10, we call the desert.
I see.
And the desert's a much harsher environment than the wilderness. It's like you can wander through the wilderness a bit lost for years or even decades, but in the desert, you're going to very quickly, die if you don't have a good game plan to be able to move through it. And so often businesses, need to raise some capital and maybe move through the desert, or they might need to raise a bit of money, or they need to come in with some resources to begin with and have a real game plan as to how we're going to get through it. If the desert is the thing that can lead to divorces and and heart attacks and all sorts of things, it's a difficult phase of growth to be able to move through that. And it really requires you to kind of go all in on the business. It's no longer about having a great lifestyle. It's like we're all in trying to grow this to get to a level where now we've got a big enough team where maybe there's 30 plus people on the team. Maybe we're doing 10 million in revenue, and we're at a stage where we're attractive for acquisition. We're no longer a small business. We're a big enough business where an even bigger business can come along, gobble us up, and they can invest their resources and their talent into growing it to another level. So those 4 distinct stages of wilderness, lifestyle boutique or struggling boutique, the desert, and then what we call performance is what we see the entrepreneur journey looking like. And like I said, it's a lot more predictable. And obviously with knowing that, you can kind of know what are the problems at each stages, and therefore what are the solutions as well.
That's great. Thank you so much for painting that vivid picture. And, I just felt like I was on an actual journey going through the wilderness and into the desert. Now, I know we are running out of time, but I would like to continue the discussion. Maybe we can record another episode. But, you have amazing insights and right on point for our audience. So maybe, we'll cut it short here. But before I let you go, can you tell us anything else that I haven't asked that you wanted to get across? And also tell us about your company and how people can reach you.
Sure. Well, I mean, maybe I look, just to give you, if you want to, I'm happy to kind of go for another few minutes. If
Sure.
if there's one more burning question you wanted to ask me, because I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about your audience. So you let me know if you think there's an interesting question that they'd like to know. I'm happy to share.
Well, most of the audience, they are in the startup or the wilderness stage. So anything that you want to add to what you've already said in terms of, how they can get through that. One of the things that I really focus on is positive mindset and the psychology of getting through these tough times as an entrepreneur. So if you have any insights on that, please do share.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm both a idealist or an optimist and a pragmatist at the same time, and so the pragmatic side of me will just right off the bat say that entrepreneurship sucks. It's hard, it's hard. It's you spend a lot of time up and down in this kind of roller coaster of emotion. So I can really sort of empathize with anyone that's going through that and dealing with those challenges. I'm not exempt from it, and any entrepreneur I meet who's really worth their salt and honest will always say they're constantly in a state of flux and at the border of chaos and order in their life. You're kind of always like just bouncing between chaos and order. And I think that's true of in life generally, but particularly if you're an entrepreneur, you're really sort of in this like constant state of flux in and out of chaos and order. So to kind of better manage that, I fall back on a few principles that help me manage that more effectively. So the principles that come to mind is things like as warm and fuzzy as this sounds, it's love. I think love is a strong emotion to bring to a lot of aspects of life, not just in relationships with your partner, but it's an important emotion to bring to the way that you choose to connect with other people around you. Whether that be people you meet at a networking event, or if it's people on your team that you're coming in to help you in your business, or maybe it's a partnership that could be really supportive or beneficial. Just finding ways to convey the emotion of gratitude and love towards those people and appreciation, I think goes a long way in just getting more of what you need to support you through that stage of the journey, but also sending the right karma and the right vibes out to the universe. Because I'm a big believer in business and entrepreneurship that we're just all a collection of people trying to get stuff done and achieve things and achieve a mission and build stuff. And so when you can approach all of those relationships from the paradigm of like, how can I give, how can I be grateful and really appreciative, and find ways to support first and really be there to emotionally kind of give that positive emotion out to people, to the world. It's going to come back to you in lots of good ways. So I think that's critical. I think the other one is thinking about your environment. So we talk a bit about this idea of a high performance environment. And I use the example of, imagine, Manuj, I was sitting working away from my kitchen bench, on this new startup, and I'm there like day and night, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, just banging away on my computer trying to get this thing going. And I've got the floorboards are creaking and the plasterboards falling off the wall, and it's not I wouldn't call it a high performance environment. And so what tends to happen working at the kitchen table, home alone, where whatever your environment, you will be a reflection of that environment. So you'll stagnate, you'll lose creativity and drive and enthusiasm, you'll start to have that negative self-talk come in. Whereas all of us, if someone came along, picked me up, put me in the Google compound, and said, hey, Mike, this is going to be your office for the next 12 months. Just we've got a little cubicle for you here. And just imagine that I was working on that same startup, doing all the same things, but I was now in the Google office. Yeah. And there were Google people buzzing around me, like having meetings and talking about stuff. And there was whiteboards up with like kind of cool ideas, and there were celebrations happening over in this corner, and people were debating over different philosophy and ideas in business. And then I talked to someone at the water cooler, and that sparked an idea. And just by being in that environment without changing a thing about me or having any extra help in my business, just being in that high performance environment will lift my results.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an entrepreneur, I want you to think about, how do you audit your environment? Am I doing everything I can with the resources I've got to put myself into a high performance environment? What I'd say is that also you need to ask yourself the question, can I afford not to be in a high performance environment as well? Yeah. Because often putting yourself into some sort of an environment like that, whether it be joining a technology accelerator like the DMZ that I'm in now, or joining a program like ours, or going to a co-working space, or joining a network of business owners, it all requires some level of resources. So when I first got to Toronto, one of the first things I did was join a business community and a business network, because even though I'm working on limited capital to get a business established here, I know that that's a really important resource for me to invest into.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I'd suggest that. And then the final thing I'd say in terms of just being scrappy and bootstrapping your business is to pick up the phone, jump on the phone, talk to people, have conversations. Don't just sit behind your computer trying to, tinker with systems and web pages and all those kind of things to get stuff done. I know if you're building a technology company, it's, you think, okay, that's where I've got to be spending the time, and that's an important part. But I promise you've got to really allocate some time to getting out and rubbing shoulders with other entrepreneurs and people and networks, and because it's in the relationships that they'll connect you with all the resources that you really need to make this successful. Just remember that you can't build a scalable business where you're the only person doing things. And so finding ways to collaborate, finding ways to partner, and picking up the phone, meeting face to face, they're all important parts of the journey, I think, to being able to get a startup moving.
Yeah, those are very valid points. And just to add to that, your first point about love and emotion and gratitude. I was a few years ago, I was going through some dark times, and I talked to a therapist, and he explained it to me. The first step is self-love, self-esteem, and the next step is love for others and gratitude for what you have. And only then you can hope to achieve any professional success. Without the two underlying pillars, you cannot achieve the third one. And to your point about environment, I have a small office in my home, which got cluttered over time, and I had lots of equipment and everything. And I can feel the loss of creativity and the enthusiasm. So that's why I'm shifting. And this is my son's bedroom right now, so it's much more clean, and I find it much more sort of conducive to what I'm doing. And these are so very valid points. And talking to other people, rubbing shoulders with influential people, I think that's why I started the podcast. Even though I'm not on the phone, but just interacting with people and learning from their experiences, it has given me such more positive energy through the day. So those are such valid points, and I experience them every day in my life. So thanks a lot for sharing that.
And that's a pleasure. And this is a great example, right? It's even creating a podcast. I've created a podcast of my own, and that that journey of doing that and having that is just another way to allow you to build better relationships with a more diverse range of people. And I just can't emphasize it enough. I really believe that whether you're a technology company or whether you're a traditional service business, you will always achieve far more with other people than you will on your own.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And it's kind of the analogy of, imagine I said, hey, imagine you said to me, look, I'm going to run out into the basketball field or the basketball court, and I'm going to play by myself for now. But when I score a few goals, then I'll score a few points. then I'll get a team, and I'll start to get some people on my team. And if I said that to you, Manuj, what would you say to me?
Well, that's crazy talk.
Yeah, crazy talk, right? I'm never going to score a point in the first place because I'm never going to have a chance to get past the 5 other guys that are, going to surround me. So in business, it's the same thing. You always want to figure out, how do I get creative, get scrappy, get kind of work your hustle muscle to how do I surround myself with a team, in inverted commas, of people around me we're supporting each other, we're collaborating, we're finding ways to add value to each other's world, even in the early days. And that's a great way to kind of embody that philosophy of, you always want to start with a team.
That's awesome. That's great. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, this has been the longest interview so far in this podcast, and still we have so much to talk about. So I definitely want to, leave the room open for another episode with you.
Sure.
But in the meantime, please do share your company website and how people can reach you.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Manuj. It's been really enjoyable for me too. And so look, there's a few different ways you can get in touch with what we do at Dent. Just Googling Dent Global is probably a simple and easy way. But what I'd suggest is there are a whole range of tools that we have, whether it be the pitching framework that I talked about a little bit earlier on. We have an amazing tool called the Capstone Pitch Canvas, which actually helps you to unpack your pitch inside this canvas. And we've got a copy of the Key Person of Influence book, which actually talks about the principles that we've been talking about too. So if someone wants to email me, just send an email to mike@dent.global. So that's dent.global. And I'd be happy to share those resources with anyone that sends me an email. So if you want to include them in the show notes or whatever it is, or if you just anyone wants to send me an email, I'll pass those things on.
Yeah, we'll definitely include it in the show notes. So thanks a lot for your generosity there.
That's a pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Great. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing so much valuable information.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks very much.
If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that like button. It will mean the world to us. And again, if you want to be notified about our new content, please consider subscribing to our channel. And now, if you are an existing or an aspiring technology entrepreneur, then I invite you to check out my new online workshop, Bootstrapping Your Tech Startup Dreams. Go to go.tetranoodle.com/boot-podcast and sign up for free. I want to make sure more successful and sound decisions are made every day in your tech projects. Let's start finding solutions to your problems. So go to go.tetranoodle.com/boot-podcast, and I look forward to helping you with your tech startup.